real estate there is much more expensive, much more in demand. There's not as much of it. Even though Japan's a really small island, I've heard this comparison before that in terms of landmass, you're not too far off from California. A little smaller because it's actually more pinched in at many places, but the overall landmass isn't probably far from California, but the population is significantly higher. And of that landmass that is there, this was hard for me to believe, but I bought an electronic dictionary towards the end of my mission that was brand new. It had come out that year, and it had up-to-date encyclopedias in it in English. And so I read through several things about Japan. It's one of the only sources I had that I could, reliably count on, I felt like, because like I said, it was brand new that year. And it claimed that only of that land mass in Japan, only 3% is zoned for housing. Tiny fraction. So you do see a lot of these massive apartments. We call them donchis. We call them that. Everybody calls them that. They're just these apartment complexes that were incredibly huge, much bigger than anything you'd see in the States normally. Go really high, usually like 5 stories at least. And they took up a lot of area, but in that area, incredibly concentrated number of people. And so, yeah, there's a lot of economic housing, like that sort of thing. And missionaries often lived in donchi type places, not quite that big usually, but. And then even the houses, if you owned a house, like your own house, you were usually pretty darn well off, especially if you had like a car. If you had 2 cars, you're upper class, big ways. And those houses were small, and they were tight, and they were usually taller. Very rarely would you see like a kind of ranch-style expansive home. That just wasn't a thing. I saw it a couple times in Ishigaki, that island that I served on, because there were some areas out there that there just wasn't anybody. And so some people could kind of build a more expansive house. The only one that I can think of off the top of my mind was actually a white family living there. But there was one Japanese family who owned a lot of land, who they kind of had a little bit more of a secluded, bigger house. But it's rare. It's very rare, especially in the city areas, So that is true, that the housing is much different than here. Like this kind of house, if you owned this house in Japan, which is, I don't know, can't tell just from looking and from what I've seen, you'd be one of the richest people out there. You know what I mean? Especially having a yard, unheard of practically. So there's that.